Now,
on News Talk 105.9 WMAL.
O'Connor and Company.
7:07, and it's great to be back here on O'Connor and Company. I'm Larry O'Connor. Remember me? It's been 2 weeks. What a vacation. Thanks so much to Vince Colonnese, Mike Opelka, and Derek Hunter for sitting in while I was gone. Julie Gunlock, did you miss me, Jules?
We did.
We?
And the viewers. Me and the viewers. And listeners.
They would be listeners. I'm sorry. Did you turn a camera on while I was gone? What's in here? Studio did look a little different. Great to be back, and thank you to our great friends at Young America's Foundation. I was on their cruise over in Europe, and it was terrific, and I'll talk about it a little later if you want. Anyway, coming up at 8:05, our friend Jamie Whitten is back on traffic. We're going to talk to Jamie about how things have been while she's been gone and what she's planning as our new traffic voice here on O'Connor and Company. And then at 8:35, Link Lauren, who's covering the political campaigns in a very unique way, and you'll hear from Link coming up at 8:35. Right now, though, boy, have I missed Joe diGenova. Joe, it's amazing. I was gone for 2 weeks on a vacation. They discovered cocaine. They thoroughly investigated the cocaine in the White House, and they discovered that it wasn't anybody's. It just sort of like spontaneously appeared, and now they've covered it all up, all in 2 weeks. That's amazing.
Yes, one would have thought that all these records would have previously been broken, but here they are breaking new records in bad law enforcement. I think the Secret Service is probably too close to this event since they were responsible for the security in the White House. To ask them now to answer the question, how was it compromised, which is really the way to look at this, is really inappropriate. Somebody else should have done this investigation, not the Secret Service.
Yeah.
But whatever, it's now done. And it's not going anywhere, and the Justice Department is not going to care one way or the other. Certainly the U.S. Attorney for the district, Matthew Graves, who better lawyer up soon, is not going to do anything about it because they just don't care. And they're doing everything they can to protect the message from the White House, which is we're the best. We're really good at what we do.
And listen, and sadly, I'm partly guilty about this. A lot of us has sort of been using this as a punchline because it's Hunter Biden and he's a crackhead and all that stuff. But, Joe, what if this was a bag of anthrax? Would this be such a laughing matter? Would John Kirby have treated this in such a nonchalant matter? Would the Secret Service? Would it only be the Secret Service investigating? I mean, why is this? This is the most protected building on the planet, and we're just supposed to shrug and walk away and say, "Oh, these things happen."
Well, the White House has told them what to do. You can bet your bottom dollar that the White House counsel has been involved in this. He is up to his scuppers in this, and there's no doubt that they are controlling the evolution of this. Besides that, the Justice Department knows what it is supposed to do, and it is not doing it. And that is because Merrick Garland is compromised. The FBI isn't doing the right thing because Christopher Wray is compromised. All you had to do was watch his testimony the other day, and you can see that. They don't care what you think or I think or the American people think about how bad they look doing this and answering your question, what if this were anthrax? And obviously, there's something really wrong in this White House. And nobody is going to do anything about it except the voters at the ballot box in 2024.
It's just so disconcerting how many things. It's the same trajectory here. We don't know about the cocaine. We don't know who leaked Dobbs. We don't know who left the pipe bombs on Capitol Hill. We don't. The details on Paul Pelosi's attack are still kind of fuzzy. It just seems like these things just move on. No one asked any questions.
Yeah,
There's
but
no
a grandma who walked through an open door on the Capitol, there was a
straight to jail.
Two-year manhunt for her, and she gets life without parole.
Well, I think it's very important also to add another layer on top of this, which is the Hunter Biden case itself, where it's very obvious that the entire case in Delaware is and was hopelessly compromised from the beginning by having a U.S. attorney who's really not a Trump appointee. But that doesn't matter. A U.S. attorney has a job to do.
Right.
Mr. Weiss has not done it. This is an amazing story of political corruption in the state of Delaware. Just the basics. When you look at no search warrants issued, even though there was probable cause to search various places. No Bidens were interviewed because they weren't allowed to be interviewed. There was probable cause. Everybody has to remember what that means. That means there was evidence of a crime that had been established to go before a judge and get a search warrant, just like in Mar-a-Lago. The statute of limitations was allowed to expire for major tax felonies. Why wasn't it extended with the agreement of the defense? It goes on. Why was the assistant U.S. attorney allowed to warn the defense attorneys that search warrants were coming? I mean, every question you can ask about what went wrong in Delaware is an answer as to why it was a corrupt investigation and remains so until this day.
And it turns out we're probably going to learn even more questions that need to be asked and more answers to things that we've already sort of suspected. This Wednesday, as James Comer, the chairman of the House Oversight Committee, has announced that he will have a hearing Wednesday afternoon where the second IRS whistleblower who has been backing up everything that Supervisory Agent Gary Shapley has said so far will now learn that person's identity. And this is what do you think of the way the committees, from Jim Jordan on Judiciary, James Comer in Oversight, and also I want to give a shout out to James Smith on Ways and Means, who it appears just dotted every I and crossed every T on handling these whistleblowers from the IRS that fell under the Ways and Means purview. How do you feel about the way they've put together this case in the methodical fashion that they have?
Well, I'm of two minds on this. I think there are too many players. Too many band leaders. It makes it much more difficult for the public to follow the story. But it may be because there's so much that has to be done. There's no other way to do this than by have multiple committees share the work and do it. The information is getting out, and there's no doubt that if the mainstream media were the slightest bit honest, the stories would be much bigger than they are. But it's pretty clear that the stories have become very big. They have seeped into the public mind, and that it's having an effect on the electorate. That, by the way, seems to not be affecting the Biden people. They seem to be assured that nothing's going to happen to them, and they're just plowing forward. But I think Jordan and Comer and Smith from the House Ways and Means have done very, very good work. It remains to be seen when you have the media fighting you and not wanting to tell your story, how much they can do. But I think they're doing everything they can do. I think criticizing them doesn't do any good. I wish Smith had a deeper voice, but there's nothing he can do about that.
Joe, can you? There's some developments occurred over the week with regard to the Supreme Court, and I always love to get your perspective on that. Can you hold on for one more quickie here?
Absolutely.
Good. Joe diGenova sticks with us here on some SCOTUS developments in a moment. But first, 7 minutes.
WMAL.
Making sense of the news.
Live
from the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios.
Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
Miss anything? Don't worry, we've got you covered. Get today's breaking news on the Vince Colonnade Show, weekdays 3 to 6, right here on WMAL.
Continue with Joe diGenova, former U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, our legal analyst. Justice Sonia Sotomayor has made at least $3.5 million from her books since she joined the Supreme Court 2009. And it's now been revealed by an investigative report from those right-wing hacks at the Associated Press, Joe, that Sotomayor's staff prodded public institutions like schools, universities, various other civic organizations that had Sotomayor booked for a speech, as if the honorarium for the speech wasn't enough, as if the lifetime job with the way you're treated like royalty in this town as a Supreme Court justice wasn't enough. They, the staff, prodded these institutions to buy her memoir or her children's book to help those book sales. I don't know anyone who voluntarily goes to buy Sonia Sotomayor's book, and apparently no one did. It's all been under pressure from her staff. This is pretty startling considering what we've been hearing from the media about Justice Thomas and Alito and Roberts with fake scandal stories about them or ethical behaviors. What do you make of the Sotomayor story?
Well, I think it provides us with an answer. It's the reason her opinions are so bad and her facts are so wrong. She's spending all of her time selling books and not doing her work at the court. I mean, first of all, if you read her opinions, she sounds like an imbecile. And Ketanji Brown Jackson got facts in her opinions that are simply wrong and are not in the record. And if they are in the record, they're misconstrued. I think that the court is going through really a fascinating paroxysm of pain on the left side of the aisle. I can see where somebody like Kagan, who is pretty smart cookie as a former Solicitor General of the United States, is really embarrassed by the performance of Ketanji Brown Jackson and Sotomayor. Sotomayor never ceases to amaze me with her stupid questions from the bench. Ketanji Brown Jackson doesn't tend to do that. She used to interrupt people when she was on the D.C. Circuit and be extremely rude. She does a little bit of that on the Supreme Court, but her writing has become really inimical to the good functioning of the court. And Sotomayor just looks like a goofball. I mean, just straight out of central casting. Who's the dumbest Supreme Court justice? Take your pick. Yeah. But she's it, number one.
Yeah, and real fast, we got Julie's going to jump in here, but the Ketanji Brown Jackson thing, it's not just that she had a fake story in her argument, but the fake story suggested that black children
black mothers do better in birth with a black doctor.
With a black doctor, which
is a lie.
It's a lie. It's an absolute fabricated thing. But when you view the world through the lens of racial politics in your Ketanji Brown Jackson, it's like, oh yeah, of course that. Any normal person would look at that and say that makes no sense whatsoever. But if you're already,
if you're committed, if you are committed ideologically, and if you've ever, I don't know if you've ever met Ketanji Brown Jackson, but here's the thing, she is humorless. She is a humorless person. She is a person who is so deeply committed to the movement, to the ideal of what they are fighting for, which is the dissolution of a constitutional republic, that she has no sense of humor. Her only reference point is the cause.
Yeah.
And when you have a brain that functions that way, it gets screwed up. And her brain is really screwed up. It's race-centric. And when your brain becomes race-centric, your view of life is completely cramped.
I don't know if she's humorless. That moment when she thought she had to be a biologist to know what a different how to define woman, that was hilarious.
Yeah,
I thought that was.
She was dead serious.
Thanks, Joe.
Thanks, Joe.
Great to talk to you. It's 7:21, and yeah, it is great to be back from vacation. I haven't taken that much. Since I started, I'm starting my 12th year on WMAL now. Next month, I think I start my 12th year. That's the longest I've ever been away.
Really?
2 weeks.
Wow.
2 weeks. 2 solid weeks at once. It was hard. I was definitely antsy. And gosh, so many great stories happened, news stories. So I was happy to be in your good hands, Patrice's good hands, Mercedes' good hands, and then, of course, having Opelka, Colonnese, and Hunter there filling in as well. It's so good to know when I walk away that the show is going to just keep plowing through.
It was super. Never do it again, okay?
We had a great time. It was with Young America's Foundation, with Governor Scott Walker, and with Peter Schweitzer. We had a group of 100 patriots who support instilling Reagan values and principles with young people. Young America's Foundation is the group that brings Ben Shapiro and Matt Walsh to college campuses, Liz Wheeler, sometimes me, to give speeches to the conservatives who are on our college campuses. And then those videos go viral, and it's really perpetuating our principles and our ideas to the new generation. That's what we need, because we sort of, fallen behind a bit because too many of our Republican leaders over the last couple of decades weren't culture war guys.
Right.
And they didn't get involved in the education
They just care
of our
about
kids.
the debt.
Yes, in China. So I had a great time and met great people along the way who are now going to be lifelong friends, and apparently new listeners from all around the country who have just gotten to know us.
That's awesome.
Through that. So that was wonderful. But apparently while I was gone, my name came up. You had this guy, Glenn Youngkin, on the show?
We did.
Governor Youngkin. And by the way, congratulations to him on this new initiative. First, he's raising money like a madman for Republican candidates. Good for him. And he's getting Republicans to sort of play the game of early voting and committing to early voting, which is everyone's talking about it, but Youngkin's actually doing it.
Yeah, but let's talk about what's really important.
Yeah.
Virginia wine country.
Exactly. This is apparently how it went.
I think you need some deputy wine ambassadors.
Maybe
Governor.
regional.
Maybe county wine ambassadors.
I have to say, our wine ambassador is doing a great job. I'm glad to see that he's visiting vineyards around the world and just confirming the superiority of Virginia wines to those around the world. And that's his job, and I was pleased to see him doing it.
He's having a good time doing it, too. We're not jealous.
It's true. I was in Bordeaux, Chile.
Tough work.
And we went to a couple of vineyards. Bordeaux apparently makes wine. Who knew? Who knew? They got a lot of. It's like, well, I got a lot of grapevines here. Let's make some wine. Why not?
What are you guys doing here?
So I did a couple of tours and a couple of tastings, and
and it was
It's not Virginia wine.
That's right.
I will just say this: that Bordeaux stuff in France, not Virginia wine. And I will leave it at that. It's 7:30 in your nation's capital.
WMAL-FM, Woodbridge, Washington, a Cumulus media station.
Making sense of the news.
News Talk 105.9.
News now. WMAL now.
On News Talk 105.9 WMAL.
O'Connor and Company.
It is 7:36 on this Monday morning in the nation's capital. Great to be back from vacation. Larry O'Connor alongside Julie Gunlock. Julie, coming up at 8:05. We're going to check in with our old friend and now colleague, Jamie Whitten. She's the best in the business when it comes to traffic on the radio or on TV, for that matter, too. And she's now back part of the team here. She's in the company.
awesome.
As they say. So we'll check in with Jamie at 8:05, and then at 8:35, Link Lauren, who is a social media culture critic. He's been covering the presidential campaign in a very unique way. So we'll share that with you coming up as well. Let's talk about the presidential election and the race, because it really did get quite hot over the weekend. We gave you lots of audio of the one-on-one exchanges that Tucker Carlson had with each of the candidates, save for Trump. I think he's the only one who didn't go to this thing, sponsored by the Blaze in Iowa. And then also Charlie Kirk and the Turning Point USA folks had their own event at West Palm Beach, Florida. And I think Nikki Haley didn't show up to that, and Ron DeSantis didn't show up to that one. I think Tim Scott also was a no-show to that one. Asa showed up.
Oh, yeah.
Asa Fever. Asa Fever ain't happening. It wasn't a good weekend for Asa Hutchinson. But Vivek Ramaswamy actually came out. I played your audio already of his response about January 6th, which I thought was incredibly thoughtful and passionate and worth discussing, which, you know, you're not even allowed to say anything about January 6th, right?
No.
His perspective on it, I think, was very thoughtful, and I liked it. He also appeared with Charlemagne the God. Now, this is a talk radio guy out of Florida, who was very big. You know, that Kamala Harris used to go on there all the time until Charlemagne the God started calling her. This is the guy who Joe Biden said, well, if you're voting for the other guy, you ain't black. Remember?
Yes.
Yeah. And so here's Vivek Ramaswamy on that show. And by the way, this is part of the reason why we like Vivek. He goes to these places. Mm-hmm. He appears and he engages.
I can absolutely blame white supremacy. 100%.
Really?
Yeah.
See, say more, and then I'll respond to that.
I mean, just look at the history of the country. Like, it's really just that simple for me. The country has never fulfilled its promises of freedom, liberty, and justice for all. It's always been freedom, liberty, and justice for some. And usually that some is white people.
So here's what I would say in response to that. That is obviously true that the nation has fallen short of our promise since our founding. But walk through some obvious facts about America. We're not founded on an ethnicity or a monarch or a food or even a religion. We're founded on a set of ideals that brought a group of people together in 1776, and we live by those ideals. At least we aspire to those ideals today. A nation that aspires to ideals that's not made up of gods, but made up of human beings, will always fall short of those ideals. So I think our worst hypocrisies as a country, and we have many of them, our worst hypocrisies are our best evidence that we have ideals at all. You take a look at other countries. Nobody ever calls the Chinese Communist Party a hypocrite, or China a hypocrite, or Iran a hypocrite. Why is that? Because to be a hypocrite, you at least had to have ideals in the first place.
But a lot of
and so we're imperfect, but we are about the pursuit of a more perfect union, the pursuit of happiness. America's about the pursuit. And so I think that trashing ourselves, I think we are, actually.
The reason I say that is because, you know, we never were included in those ideals originally.
Originally. Yeah. But never and not originally are two different things. Originally, that's true. Over 250 years of progress, if you had somebody who was in 1870 looking at the world we live in today, if you had somebody in 1960 who was looking at the world we live in today as it relates to race in America, we would be darn close to what they would have thought of as the promised land.
Now, there's a little bit more of this, and I'm going to play it for you, but I want to just take a quick moment to praise Vivek Ramaswamy a little bit here on various levels. And the first and most important thing that you have to understand is because so many of my friends, so many of my conservative friends, some of them who listen to this program get frustrated when a person like Vivek or any conservative Republican doesn't walk into that room with Charlemagne the God, who's saying, you know, white supremacy is the biggest problem in this country, and they don't go full Mark Levin on them, right? And they don't. And by then, that's not a criticism of Mark Levin. Mark is the greatest broadcaster we have, and he is incredible at what he does, and he knows more about this. But Vivek Ramaswamy's job here is not to win a debate with Charlemagne the God. Vivek Ramaswamy's job here is not to one-up this guy who is sure that white supremacy is ruining our nation. Vivek Ramaswamy is not there to win an argument and change this guy's mind. He's there to present a different perspective on our country that all of the people who watch and listen to this guy never get to hear ever.
Right.
And by presenting it in the way that he did, he just now presented information and a perspective on our country that I guarantee you got some people thinking a different way for the first time in their lives.
Yep.
And there's so much power to that. There's so much value to that. And don't fall into this trap that you've got to destroy the libs. No, you don't have to destroy the libs. You have to counter what they say in a way that attracts people to you.
Yes, he did not even dismiss what Charlemagne the God said. He said, you're right. We have not lived up to our ideals, to our promise. But let me give you this other perspective.
Right.
And it's brilliant because it does say we still have work to do.
Yeah.
We still have a great deal of work to do. But at least acknowledge that we've come a long way and that we're constantly trying to do better.
Right. And
that is a far better. I think, honestly, Americans want, in their gut, want to be proud of their country. They want to be patriots.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a way of saying, yeah, moles and marks and bruises and scrapes and all, but America is still the greatest country on this earth.
And he relied on our founding documents and the language of our founding documents to say we never set out to make a perfect union, just a more perfect union. There's no such thing as a perfect union. And he also blew away the narrative that well, we haven't lived up to our ideals. Well, of course we haven't. But at least we have ideals.
We're trying. Yes.
We have ideals. And forget about living up to them. We have gone more than any other nation has ever done in living up to those ideals. And the fact that we even charted out those ideals in our founding.
I noticed Charlemagne the God was kind of quiet.
Yeah, he was. He's a little more.
So I think we have to recognize that America is about that pursuit. We're a lot further along than we were 250 years ago. And here's the other thing, too. We got to set our expectations. We will always fall short of our ideals.
That's right.
By definition, if there are human beings and not gods living in a nation that aspires to ideals, we are fallen. Man is fallen. That's what makes us who we are. But what also makes us different from animals is that we have ideals. Mm-hmm. So America's founded on our humanity, that we can believe and aspire to something that we will still fall short of. That's what makes this country beautiful. And that's why that's why I'm in this. You ask me, why am I in this? I care about reviving pride in that nation, because if we get into the habit of just bashing that country, what are we bashing? We're bashing the last best hope that man has for aspiring to those ideals. Tell me who else has done better. I'll wait.
It was a good weekend for Vivek Ramaswamy.
Oh, it really was.
A very good weekend.
He's very
and he
good.
continues
He's
to
very
turn
articulate.
heads. Yep. As you know, we were the first ones to contract Asa fever here on O'Connor and Company. Asa fever swept the nation, and there was a moment there when it was really catching fire, and it was really sort of. I think he had a shot, but I think Asa the fever may have broken at this point. Well, you know how you wake up in a cold sweat when the fever breaks?
Are you there?
Yeah,
Are you there?
I think it may be there. Tucker asked him some very specific questions, because, Asa Hutchinson's been one of those guys who's been grandstanding about the COVID, about the shots and the vaccines and the jabs and the masks and the virtue signaling over all that stuff.
One of the powers that government did usurp over the past several years is the right to decide what medicine you take.
Hutchinson, by the way, was governor of Arkansas during the pandemic, so a lot of his, as one of the Republicans who was rather robust in his lockdown protocols, this is fair game, certainly, because I honestly, I think anybody running for president right now, the question is, how'd you do during the pandemic? DeSantis wins that fight, hands down.
In the form of COVID mandates. How did you feel about that? And how many COVID shots did you take? And how do you feel about it now, in retrospect?
How many COVID shots did you take?
0.
Never ask a question if you don't know the answer.
Yeah, you could hear in the tone there that it was like it was sort of a gotcha moment. He was like, "Well, yeah, how many did you take?"
And how many COVID shots did you take? And how do you feel about it now, in retrospect?
How many COVID shots did you take?
0.
Yeah, that wasn't.
Yeah.
But then it went on well beyond that.
The trans kid stuff.
Yeah, the legislature in Arkansas passed a bill blocking anti-puberty prescriptions for minors.
Yeah.
Asa Hutchinson vetoed it.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the Republican voters, conservative, American voters, deserve to hear an answer about that.
To prevent him from going through the natural process of adolescence? How is that treatment? It seems not like treatment. It seems like something else.
Well, you have to... Tucker, I hope that we'll be able to talk about some issues. I know that...
Well, this is one of the biggest issues in the country.
Yeah, that right there. I'm not a culture guy.
Right.
There's your Paul
Right.
Ryan thing. I hope we talk about issues. I'm sorry. You're going to look at those children, 5, 6, 7 years from now who are being mutilated and answer for your veto. I think it's an issue to them.
And parents who are being threatened if they don't mutilate their children.
That's right.
You don't think this is an important issue?
And I think every person in this room would agree that it is a central issue because these are children who are being altered permanently, and you can defend that alteration, that change, if you like, but there's really no debate about whether or not it's permanent. And
he defended that veto, and he went on to specifically. Well, let you hear his defense of the veto.
So I wanted to talk to you about your veto of the anti-puberty blocker trans surgery bill in April of 2021. At the time, you said that the bill was extreme and that it would interfere with the treatment of minors seeking to transition from male to female or female to male. Given, and I'm not attacking you for it, but I am asking if in the subsequent 2 years you've had rethinking of that. Have you reassessed your view on it since then?
Well, first of all, I want to...
I didn't want to say that's incredibly gracious of Tucker.
Well, but in his defense, it is shocking how quickly this is. I can almost have sympathy for someone who in 2021 not understanding where this train was going.
And for Tucker to actually allow him to sort of have this out, to say, you know what?
I'm giving you an easy landing here.
Well,
ask how many of you all are parents in this room? I'm a parent as well. And what I believe in is that parents ought to raise their children. I believe that parents ought to be in control, and I also believe in the Constitution. I believe that God created 2 genders, and that there should not be any confusion on your gender. But if there is confusion, then parents ought to be the one that guides the children.
He is so out of it. He is so out of it. Yeah. He doesn't understand how these medical organizations are recommending these things and how doctors and how these doctors are being taught how to scare parents, telling them that your child will commit suicide if they don't get this. He does not understand this issue.
Yeah. Asa does not know what time it is.
Yeah.
And, although I do know what time it is, it's time to move on from our contagion of Asa fever.